Good day, friends. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to try the viral croissant style sourdough. I watched a couple of videos, but I'm going to use my own sourdough recipe and just incorporate a cube of butter. And I decided to make a blueberry croissant style sourdough with poppy seeds. So to get started, I'm going to add 400 grams of water and then 110 grams of sourdough starter. Then I'm going to mix that until it becomes a milky consistency. Once that's well mixed, I'm going to start adding a flour blend. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I always use a flour blend. I think the mix of flours really enhances the flavor of the sourdough. I'm going to start off by adding 125 grams of Glacier Peak bread flour, and then I'll be adding 175 grams of Trailblazer T85 flour. And once that's in there, I'll be adding 250 grams of King Arthur bread flour. And I got a little bit too much flour in there, so I'm going to take some out. And once I get that to 550 grams, I'm going to add a teaspoon of Diastatic Malted Flour. And this really helps with the fermentation, and it also helps with the rise. And as you could see, I had to go back and retrieve my teaspoon, which I thought I placed on the side, but I didn't. Now that that's in there, I need to add salt. I almost forget. I almost take the bowl off the scale, and then remember, you have to add the salt. Your sourdough will not taste the same if you forget it. And I add 12 grams of salt. Now I'm going to be switching to my bowl scraper to bring the dough further together. And I just find that it's easier to use the bowl scraper to get the flour further incorporated and to clean the sides of the bowl. And once I get that together, I will then start using my hand to mix the dough to a shaggy consistency. Now that everything is well mixed, I'm going to place the dough in a warm oven for 1 hour. This is round one of stretch and folds, and the flour is now well hydrated, and you'll see I actually do 2 full sets of stretch and folds to bring the dough together. And then I'll be placing it back in a warm oven for 30 minutes. This is round 2 of stretch and folds, and this is where I'm going to add the poppy seeds, and I don't quite use a full tablespoon. I spread those on the dough, and then I incorporate them by doing the stretch and folds, and I'm going to do a full set to get those incorporated. And then I'll be placing it back in a warm oven for 30 minutes. This is round 3 of stretch and folds, and I'm going to do a complete set of stretch and folds, and then I'm going to do a window pane test. And we'll see how our gluten structure is forming. And it passes. So I'm going to place it back in a warm oven, and I'm going to check it at 1.5 hours. After 1.5 hours, bulk fermentation is going well. I'm going to do a coil fold, and this is just to ensure that I have fully incorporated the poppy seeds, and then I'll be placing it back in a warm oven for another 1.5 hours. Now that bulk fermentation is done, it's time to laminate the dough. I'll be laminating the butter and the blueberries, and you'll see I wet the counter, and look at that dough. It looks beautiful. I'm going to turn the dough out on the counter, and water is your friend when you're laminating. I'm going to use the water on my hands, and I've used it on the counter. I'm going to stretch the dough out and I stretch it out pretty wide. And then I'll start adding the blueberries. After I've added the blueberries, I'm going to add the grated butter, which I grated and then I put it in the freezer because I did not want it to get too warm. The goal of making this bread is to keep the butter from melting. Now I'm going to be doing a letter fold on the dough, and then I'll be adding some additional butter and blueberries, and this is just to ensure that the inclusions are consistent within the dough. I will also note that I'm making this sourdough without having tested in advance of making the video, so at this point I'm not sure if it's going to work out. But we'll see at the end how it comes out. After adding the inclusions, I am just bringing the dough into a bowl shape. Now after 20 minutes, I am going to do the final shaping of the dough. I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to do another letter fold, and then I'm going to roll it. And that's what the dough is looking like. I am going to seal the ends of the dough. And then I'll be placing it into the banneton, which has been floured with rice flour. After flipping it in there, I'm going to let it sit for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to just bring that seam together, and I'm just going to fold in one side. The seam looks pretty good. I'll then be adding some rice flour and placing it in the refrigerator for 36 hours. It is now 2 days later, and it's time to bake the sourdough. It's the moment of truth to see if it comes out. I'm going to turn it out on a piece of parchment paper and just do a simple score. 2 wheat stalks on each side, and then an expansion score down the center. Then I'll be baking it in a Dutch oven that's been preheated in a 450-degree oven for 40 minutes. 30 minutes with the lid on and 10 minutes with the lid off. This is what the sourdough looks like coming out of the oven. It looks pretty good. Now we'll need to let it cool, and then we'll be able to cut into it and see what that crumb looks like. Now it's time for the crumb reveal, which is the true test of sourdough success. That's what the top looks like, and the bottom is a bit buttery. So I'm going to cut down the center to reveal the crumb. And the crumb looks beautiful. I will say my husband found this sourdough very addicting. Now go out and make some great sourdough.